going to be playing Ark Nova. This is a game it's got a lot of board game buzz about it right now. Dustin was, in fact, surprised that I managed to get a hold of a copy, but Geeky Tees, shout out to them in Burbank, did have a copy.
Support your friendly local game stores.
That's right. We're gonna build zoos. Our objective is to build the best zoo. Best being measured in terms of our appeal, our zoo's appeal, and our conservation efforts. There are 2 score tracks that run alongside each other around the outside edge of the board, and they go in opposite directions. You'll track your appeal with these admission tickets along, starting from over here.
Okay.
And then you'll track your conservation points with these green chevrons starting from over here,
Gotcha.
going this way. And the structure of the game is very simple. We just keep taking turns playing through the game until somebody manages to cross their conservation points and their appeal points. At that point, they finish their turn, everybody else gets one more turn, and then there will be some final scoring that may move these a little bit further, and then whoever has managed to cross by the widest margin is the winner. These are your possible actions. At the start of the game, animals should be in the number 1 slot on your player board, and the rest, shuffle them up and put them there at random. Does not matter. All these 5 cards are basically, those are your actions. You can take 1 action on every turn. When you take an action, you'll pick one of these cards to activate, pull it downwards a little bit. Now we actually have room to do that, kind of. Pull it downwards a little bit to indicate that's the action you're taking for this turn, and then when you're done with your turn, you move it to the leftmost space and slide everything to the right to fill in. That matters because your action's strength will go up the further to the right it goes. So the longer you wait before taking any particular action, the more you'll get out of doing that action. That should make sense once I get into what all these actions are. So I'm going to start by talking about the build action, which right now is in my number 3 space. When you take the build action, you get to build 1 building with a maximum size of the strength of the build action you're taking. So that would be a maximum size of 3. There is a key over here on the map that tells you what kind of buildings are available.
Cool.
I'll go over all of those briefly here. There's the kiosk, which takes up 1 space. We're playing with the beginner map, so we all start with 1 kiosk right here. The kiosk will get you nothing when you place it. And you must make sure that there are at least two spaces between kiosks. So if I wanted to add another kiosk, I couldn't do so here or here, but I could all the way over here. Because there's 2 spaces in between it.
What's a kiosk do?
The kiosk will earn you money at particular points throughout the game. I'll talk about that once I get to it. Pavilions, that's the opposite side of this token, the kiosk token. Those earn you 1 appeal when you build them. After that point, they just take up space. That's it. Standard enclosures, like this one, are just used to house animals. An empty enclosure has a number on it. Once you put an animal in it, you'll flip that enclosure over to indicate that it's now occupied. All of the standard enclosures, there are standard enclosures in varying sizes from 1 to 5. All the standard enclosures of each respective size are the same shape. So there's no sense digging through here for a different shape of size 3. They're all going to be the same. There are also a few special enclosures, like Dustin was talking about the turtle one here. These I know nothing about. They'll come up based on specific cards.
They're all different shapes, though.
They are. There's also the petting zoo.
Oh, that one.
Oh, that's fun.
The large bird aviary. And
The reptile
house.
Oh, I'm gonna give me one of them.
I want to get a reptile house.
At the
so
start,
bad.
At the start of the game, the only one of these 3 that we have access to is the petting zoo. And you can only have 1 of each of these in your zoo. These work a little bit differently, and I'll talk about that when we get to animals. But whenever you build any sort of building in your zoo, you will pay its cost, which is 2 money per space that structure occupies. So for a size 3 enclosure, that would be 6 money.
Okay.
Your money is tracked up here with these tokens. We all start with 25.
My
Just has to be
enclosure,
touching
right?
something you've already built, yeah. Did I mention that? That new buildings have to be touching
You
existing-
did not, but I remember that from
I think I
the
forgot.
video.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I forgot to talk about that.
I didn't know that, but I was like, I know I want my kiosk to be touching it, so.
Yeah, completely forgot to talk about that. That's the build action. Next up, I'm going to talk about animals. The animals action, starting in the number 1 space, meaning you won't be able to use this action on your first turn, because down at the bottom there's a table that shows how many animal cards you'll get to play when you take this action, depending on the strength. The strength is numbered from 1 to 5. At 2 through 4, you can play 1 animal card from your hand. At 5, you can play 2. At the start of the game, we're all going to be dealt 8 cards, and then we choose 4 to keep. The rest we'll discard. There are 3 different types of cards. The deck has, I think the number was like 210 cards in it, and if I'm not mistaken, there is not a single repeat. Every card is unique.
That's interesting.
That's like a double commander deck.
There's conservation cards, which are these green ones.
Bird breeding program.
There's sponsor cards, which are these blue ones, and then there's animal cards, which are the yellow ones.
Cool.
We'll talk about the animal cards first. I'm going to talk about the anatomy of a card. And up in the top left corner, there's a number in a hexagon right there. That shows the size of standard enclosure you need to have in order to play that particular animal. So in this case, I would not be able to play this animal because I don't have a size 4 enclosure available.
Sucks to be you.
But if I did have a size 4 enclosure, I would say I have a size 4 enclosure there. Oh, that's one thing I forgot about buildings.
Eh?
When you place new buildings and cover these yellow pentagon icons, you immediately get that bonus.
Oh,
Makes
no.
sense.
And you cannot play a building covering water or rock.
Makes sense.
Back to animals. If I have a size 4 enclosure right here, and I want to play this guy, I can, because I have an empty size 4 enclosure, and there's an icon up here that has a little water droplet on it.
Yeah.
That means the enclosure that I put this animal in has to be touching a water space. That's why you can't cover the water and rocks. They have to be, there's specific places that you can have. There's a possibility of up to 2 icons up in this top left corner. They can both be water, they can both be rock, they can have one of each.
Gotcha.
So keep that in mind. But again, every card in the deck is different. Underneath those icons, there's a number in a square. That's how much the animal costs. Bless you.
Thank you.
So I would have to pay 16 money from my supply to play this guy. And on certain cards, certain animal cards, there'll be another icon right here that gives you an alternative to a standard enclosure. In this case, that alternative would be the reptile house,
Reptile
that we were
house!
talking about earlier. If I happen to have a reptile house on my board, you still have to abide by the water or rock requirements.
Gotcha.
So it would still need to be touching a water space. Let's say I had a reptile house there. If you're playing an animal in a special enclosure like this, instead of flipping it over, because both sides are the same on this guy, you just take a cube from your supply and put it on one of those spaces.
Yeah.
In the case of this card, it says it takes 2 spaces in the reptile house. So you'd have to have 2 empty spaces, you cover 2 of them, and that lets you know that guy has a place to stay.
2.
If it's a standard enclosure, you just flip it to the other side, and that shows that enclosure is occupied. You do not need to do anything to track which animals are in which enclosures. That doesn't matter in terms of gameplay. You just have to have a place to put them all when you play them. These icons in the top right corner of the card will come into effect. They affect certain cards that you might play throughout the course of the game.
Gotcha.
And we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But they don't necessarily... If there is an icon up here that is mentioned in the text down at the bottom that says, like, you get something for every reptile icon or whatever, it counts for itself.
Cool.
When you play it. And then you do whatever the text says down at the bottom and gain the bonus down in the bottom right. In this case, 6 appeal. Then, when you play the card, you play it face up on the ample table space that you have next to your player board.
Obviously.
The good news is that the only information that matters once a card has been played are the icons at the top. So when you play another card, you can just cover everything except that little row of icons. So it kind of cascades like that. That's animals. Now I'm going to talk about sponsors next. No, first I'm going to talk about the cards action.
This episode's sponsored by Raycon.
First, I'm going to talk about the cards action, actually. So the cards action also has a table like the animals one down at the bottom that shows how many cards you get to draw from the deck into your hand. And if you need to discard any, it will tell you that as well. Obviously, you don't have to discard the card that you draw, because that would be stupid. You draw the card, and then you discard a card, according to those rules on that table. Then, as an alternative, instead of drawing and discarding, if you are doing a strength of 5 cards action, you can do what's called snapping. I don't know why they call it snapping. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Oh, cool.
But
Cool. This sounds like this is going to be good then.
in the center of the table, we are going to deal out 6 cards. We can do that now, actually.
Let's go.
If you take the snapping action, you can take any one of the cards in the display. It doesn't matter where it is. Snapping is the only time that it doesn't matter where it is. There are other times that it might come into effect. That's what the reputation track is for. I'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
Oh, God.
The cards action, you can either draw and discard if necessary. Let me go back over to this guy right here. This card right here. You can draw and discard if necessary based on the strength of the cards action you're taking. Or if it's a strength 5 all the way over here, you can snap instead, which would be taking a card from the display, from anywhere in the display. Before you do either of those things on a card's action, you advance the coffee cup on the board 2 spaces.
Oh.
This little coffee cup.
I was going to
right
ask what
here.
the coffee cup number was.
This break track will advance from cards and from sponsors. I'll talk about what it means when I get done with all the actions. So to recap, cards action, you start by advancing the coffee cup 2 spaces.
Cool.
And then you either draw and discard if necessary, based on the table, or snap a card from the display. Either way, you're adding cards to your hand. That's what the cards action's all about.
Got it.
Next, I'm going to talk about sponsors. When you take a sponsor's action, you can play one sponsor's card with a maximum level of the strength of the sponsor's action you're taking. So in this case, that would be a level 5, fine, from your hand. That level is indicated by the number in the top left.
Got it.
Any other requirements that need to be met to play that sponsor's card will be along the left side of the card, just like with animals cards. They're up in this top left corner.
Got it.
This one I would not be able to play because that icon indicates that I need to have a level 2 sponsor action,
Gotcha.
which I don't have yet.
How do you get that?
I'll talk about that in just a sec.
Fair.
And then that icon right there means that I cannot have any more than 25 appeal points when I play this card.
Oh, it's like a Terraforming Mars thing.
Yeah, these icons up in the top right, same as animal cards, they might affect different effects,
Gotcha.
card effects. When you play a sponsor's card, same thing, you do whatever it says at the bottom, you play it face up to that cascading row of cards
Gotcha.
alongside your board. Alternatively, instead of playing a sponsor's card when you take a sponsor's action, you can take a break,
Oh.
where you advance the coffee cup a number of spaces equal to the strength of the sponsor's action,
Oh.
and gain that much money.
Gotcha.
Oh.
If the coffee cup is already here when I take a strength 5 sponsor's action to move it,
Uh-oh.
and it only moves 2 spaces, I still get all 5 money.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Last one is the association action. This guy is the most complicated because there's a lot of options. When you perform,
It's been pretty simple up until this.
yeah, right. So when you take an association action, you can perform one association task with a maximum value of the strength of the association action you're taking. In this case, 4. When you perform an association task, you will use a zoo worker meeple from your notepad. You'll notice there are 3 more along here. You can't use those until you've unlocked them.
What?
You gotta hire those employees.
So at the start of the game, we only have one of these. But when you perform an association task, you'll use the zoo worker to come over to the association board.
It's a worker placement game too.
Worker placement.
And you will move your zoo worker to one of these 4 spaces to take and perform an association task.
Okay.
I'll start with this one. At a strength of 5, you have the option to do a conservation association task. This is the last card type. So at the start of the game, we've dealt 4 random conservation cards from the conservation deck to this lineup. These are only used during setup. At this point, they could go back in the box. So there's 4 randomly dealt conservation cards. You might also come across some in the big deck of cards. When you take a conservation action, if you have fulfilled any of these requirements, which are dictated by these icons on these cards, for example, if you have at least 2 European animals in your zoo, then you can take a cube from the left side of your board, right here, any one of them, to place it on that icon over there. Then you will immediately gain that reward, which in this case would be 2 conservation points. If you, this is a 2 or more, 4 or more, 5 or more, you can strategically, if you have 5, but you look around the table and everybody else only has 2, you could be like, I'm gonna be a and make sure nobody can do the Europe conservation action for a while.
That's what I would do.
Yeah.
So
sounds like some.
You get less of a reward for it, but you can do that.
Because I'm coming back for that 4 next turn.
No, you're not, because
What?
You cannot place a cube on a space that already has a cube. You also cannot place a cube on a card that already has one of your cubes.
Oh, then I'm going for that 5 every time.
There you go.
I knew it.
Whenever you take a cube off of this board to play him over here, you immediately gain whatever that reward is.
Ooh.
These 3 down here, you only get that reward immediately. But these 4 up here, you get them immediately, and then you get them again every time we take a break.
Oh, damn.
And do we have to choose go from bottom up?
You can choose from any whenever you play one of these cubes, you can play from anywhere.
Okay.
If you look at all of these conservation cards and you're like, no, f all of those. I don't want to play a cube on those, but
Yeah,
I am
I
going
know.
to take a conservation action.
Yeah.
You can play a conservation card from your hand to up here, which is going to be up here,
Oh, cool.
and play a cube on that. You play it in the leftmost space, right there. If you're playing a card from your hand, you have to put a cube on it immediately. You put it in the leftmost space. If there's already a card there, you slide them down. If it slides all the way off, you discard it and give everybody their cubes back. Those cubes go into your supply. They don't go back onto your board.
Cool.
The Strength 4 Association task. You can get a partnership with a university. As long as you don't already have that token, you can take it and put it over on your player board.
Yep.
From the bottom up, and you immediately get whatever that icon is as a reward. If you cover an icon with a future one, you immediately get that bonus as well. You cover...
Upgrade.
That would be upgrade in action. Yeah.
Any action?
Any action. So that's how those things work. If somebody else has already been over to that particular association task before we take a break, and that token's already taken, you can't take it. You gotta wait till it's been replenished.
Interesting. Nice foreshadowing.
And if the only token there is one that you already have, then you can't take that association task.
Got it.
Next up, partner zoos. There are 5 different continents on which you can partner with a zoo. They work pretty much the same as the partner universities. You can only have one of each, but
And they go on.
they go onto your player board, and if you have that particular zoo partnership, that would mean that you can play any animal with an America's icon on it at a discount of 3 money. And again, if you cover an icon with a future one, you immediately gain that bonus.
And this one's bottom up as well.
Yes, always bottom up.
But you can't.
Bottoms up.
Can you? So can you not place if you don't upgrade?
Correct. These two spaces are in the pink or the purple. That means you have to have level 2 association in order to get
Gotcha.
these two partnerships. Next up, at 2 strength, you can get 2 reputation, which I haven't talked about at all yet.
Reputation.
Reputation is tracked in the middle of the board, right here,
Oh God.
alongside the display, which will matter when you start upgrading abilities to level 2. So, as Dustin so aptly noticed, there are icons around the outside of the board. There are icons on your player boards. Anytime it's a yellow pentagon and you get to it, you get that reward.
Cool.
The first time that's probably going to come up, unless you're covering something on your map, is at level 2 conservation. At this point, you have to choose if you want to upgrade one of your action cards or unlock one of your extra workers.
Okay.
And I will point out that there are only 4 opportunities throughout the entire game to upgrade cards.
Really?
There are only 3 opportunities throughout the entire game to unlock additional workers. So this choice will matter. At Conservation 5 and 8, there are 4, at each, there's 2 randomly chosen reward tokens. If you're the first one there, you get to take your pick. You take one, that would be a free university partnership.
No.
But once it's taken, it's gone, and whoever comes next doesn't get to choose that one. If they're both gone, your only choice is to take 5 money.
Okay. At least you get something.
You do get something. And you can choose to take 5 money instead of whatever that reward is, too, if you don't like it.
Cool.
And at 10 conservation, I haven't even talked about this, we're all going to be dealt 2 final scoring cards at random. And once the first person gets to 10, we'll have to discard one of those final scoring cards. I haven't even looked at these to see what they are. So that would be gain conservation points for research icons in your zoo. So for all of the cards that have that research icon on them, you would gain 1 conservation point at the very end of the game. Which, those are your victory points, is conservation and appeal, and crossing them by as much as possible. So that's the kind of stuff that'll be in your final scoring. You'll get 2 of them to choose from, and you'll have them for the first bit of the game, but once the first person gets to 10 conservation, you have to discard 1.
Gotcha.
If somehow we manage to finish the game before anybody gets here, you discard one of them before scoring.
Gotcha.
You still have to make a choice. Where should we go next? Do we want to talk about breaks, or do we want to talk about leveling up actions?
Let's go with breaks.
Yeah,
Okay.
Let's do
Breaks.
Take a break.
So
Let's
the
take a break.
Let's take a break and
Take a
talk
break.
about breaks. So, when the coffee cup gets to the end of the track, which is this icon with the coffee cup on it and the X thing, whoever the active player is immediately earns an X token, which I haven't talked about yet either.
What the f***?
The X tokens, you can hold up to 5 of them, and on any turn, you can spend as many of them as you want to increase the strength of the action you're taking.
Okay.
This 1 X token is +1 strength.
Gotcha.
That reminds me, there is a 6th possible action. In addition to the 5 laid out on your cards, you can activate any card you want to just skip your turn and take an X token. The rulebook specifically says, we would advise you don't do this if you can help it, because it's kind of a waste of a turn. But if there's nothing else you can do, that's something you can do. So, when the coffee cup gets to the end of the track, somebody gets the active player gets the X token, they finish their turn, and then at the end of the turn, everybody takes a break. This is the only time that hand size comes into play. Up until this point, you can have as many cards as you want in your hand.
Okay.
But when we take a break, you have to discard down to 3.
It's poopy.
Unless you have a partnership with that university that increases your hand size limit to 5. Next, you'll discard these icons, which I haven't talked about. We'll get to them when we get to them.
Cool. I like that.
Next, you will reset the association board, which, if there's any tokens missing, you replenish them from the
Gotcha.
supply.
Okay.
Everybody gets their zoo workers back. That's the only time you'll get your zoo worker back. So once you take an association task with that zoo worker, he's gone until we get to a break. And then we will discard the 1 and 2 cards from the display, move everything down, and deal 2 new ones. Lastly, we all get some bonus stuff. Anytime you see this purple hand, that means you're getting stuff on a break. The first thing is you'll get money for wherever your appeal is at on the track. If you notice around the outside edges, there's money icons with numbers.
Cool.
That's how much money you'll get for having your appeal at those spaces.
Okay.
Kiosks in your zoo
I got one of them.
will award you
Now you do.
1 money for every unique structure that they're touching, but empty standard enclosures do not count.
Okay. So it's got to be.
It's got to be
Have something
yeah,
in it.
it's got to have something in it, or it's got to be a special enclosure,
Gotcha.
or a pavilion.
But it could be an empty special.
It could be an empty special
Okay.
Good to know.
enclosure.
Good to know.
Just empty standard enclosures don't count
Cool.
for that. So over on my board here, if I had this filled enclosure and this empty enclosure, that kiosk is worth 1 money because this is empty.
Got it.
But since they're different sizes, if it's filled, they're unique, that's worth 2 money. If they're both the same size and they're both filled, they're not unique, it's 1 money. Then you'll get any bonuses that might happen to be on cards. That would be tracked with icons at the top. And then you'll get rewards for conservation cubes that you have removed from the top 4 spots.
Okay.
That's that
what
purple
you get
hand.
there to break. Gotcha.
After all of that is done for everybody, and it can pretty much happen simultaneously unless there's something that's like on your break you get to take something out of the display or something, then we go in turn order.
Gotcha.
After it's all done, coffee cup goes back to the number 4 player thing because we have 4 players, and play continues with the next player.
Got it.
That's breaks. When we come across these icons that we talked about, you'll get to upgrade 1 action card of your choice. These will unlock additional things for you. So, back to actions for level 2. This is simpler, I promise, than level 1 actions. Level 2 build. You'll flip the card over to the purple side. Level 2 build unlocks the large bird aviary and the reptile house, which we talked about. You won't be able to build them until you're level 2 on your build action. Also unlocks the ability to build in these 2 spaces that are marked with that requirement icon on
Oh,
your
that's
zoo.
what they are.
And it unlocks the ability to build more than 1 building on the same turn. Instead of building 1 building with a maximum size of X, X being the strength of the action, you can build 1 or more buildings with a total size of no more than X.
Gotcha.
You still pay their cost the same, and that's building at level 2. Animals level 2 gives you more animals that you can play more animals easier. Also allows you to play animals from the display.
Nice.
What?
But they have to be within your reputation range. So this is what the reputation track is all about. If your reputation is here, your reputation range is the number 2 folder and the number 1 folder.
Gotcha.
If it's here, or here, or here, it's the number 3 folder and down. Your reputation range is cards that are your reputation or lower. If you play an animal card directly from the display, you still have to meet all of its requirements. You still pay its cost. You also pay an additional cost of the folder number on top of that. So this animal, to play it straight from the display, would cost you a total of 30 money. That's animals level 2. Cards level 2. Pretty much
More cards.
same kind of thing, like upgrades the table for you, but it also allows you to draw cards from within your reputation range. When you draw cards from within your reputation range, you do not have to pay anything additional.
Okay.
Okay.
They just go straight into your hand.
Gotcha.
And you can mix and match. If you've got a draw of 5 strength, where you get to draw 4 cards, you could go, I'm going to take this guy from the display and that guy from the display, and then I'll take 2 from the deck. And snapping still works the same way as it did before. You can snap a card from the display, 1 card from the display, regardless of reputation range. And you still move the coffee cup 2 spaces. Sponsors level 2 lets you play multiple sponsors cards instead of just one, up to a total level of X plus 1.
Ooh.
So the strength of the sponsor's action you're taking plus 1 is the total strength of all sponsors cards you're playing.
Got it.
You can play sponsors cards from your hand or from your reputation range in the display. When you play a sponsors card directly from the display, you pay the cost associated with that folder. Also, at level 2 on sponsors, as an alternative, you can still take the break action, and if you do that, you gain double the money.
Ooh.
And at association level 2, you can perform multiple association tasks on the same turn. They have to be different from each other,
Okay.
with a maximum total value of X being the strength of that association action. By the by, forgot to talk about this. If you've already got a zoo worker on any given task, it doesn't matter what other people's zoo workers are doing, but if you've already got a guy here, it will take 2 guys to take that same task again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't like it.
Yeah.
That makes
That's
sense.
what this icon up here means. If you don't have a guy there, 1 guy, you get to take that task. If you do have a guy here, 2 more guys to take that
What
task.
if you already have 2 guys on? What if you have 3 guys on there?
Then you can't take that task.
Where's the icon that says that?
Well, you don't have
You wouldn't
enough
have
guys.
enough guys. You can take multiple association tasks on the same turn if you're at level 2 with association. Also, when you're done taking whatever association tasks you're taking, you can, at no additional cost really, make a charitable donation, which is whatever the lowest cost available is, 2, 5, 7, 10, 12. You take a cube, put it on there to say that's not available anymore, and you earn 1 conservation point. You can do that once per association action.
And it costs you, like this costs you 2, this costs you 5.
Yeah, it costs you money, and that's it. It doesn't cost you anything towards the total strength of your association tasks for that turn.
So snapping.
I believe I'm done talking.
You're not. You're really not.
Oh, actually, I'm not. Actually, I'm not. Because if it comes up, there's one more icon on the board, which is at the number 5 appeal points space. There's a little yellow stop sign with a red outline. There are 10 cards in the entire deck that have that icon somewhere down in the text. That indicates that they have an interactive component to them, which is basically, that's the only way you can f with your opponents directly, is with cards that have that icon.
Okay.
You can only be affected by that icon if you are at this level of appeal or higher.
Gotcha.
Okay.
It'll be 5 or higher.
And
That makes sense.
if any cards come up that have a little bit of text at the bottom that's in a blue box next to one of these zoo worker silhouettes, ignore it because that's for the solo game.
Okay. Why is that ticket red?
I don't know.
Oh, cool.
Thank you for asking.
Cool.
My theory is that has to do with the fact that there are a lot of cards that will have like the max 25 on them.
Okay.
But I have no idea.
Use your reference.
Yeah, but I have no idea. We'll find out.
Cool.
Any other questions?
How much of that did any of y'all retain?
What? So
think
are we gonna start broadcasting soon, or?
Hey, thanks for watching. If you like that, be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and most importantly, go on over to twitch.tv/BnBTabletop and give us a follow there. We play board games live every Sunday night at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time on a show we call The Board and Barrel. And it's a very interactive broadcast. We have house rules that you guys can influence throughout the course of the game, virtual bingo, you can bet on who's gonna win. It's a lot of fun, and I look forward to seeing you there.